Today we are reacting to Pokemon Emerald is Worse Than I Thought by Smithplays Pokemon. Apparently this guy has a lot of critiques on why Pokemon Emerald, my all-time favorite game and what I've branded myself after, why is it bad? Why is it worse than we remember? And he's going to tell us. So make sure to go and subscribe to this guy as well, just like I did. And make sure to subscribe to the Emerald Mike channel as well. Everybody's allowed to have their own opinions. Maybe he might convince me by the end of this video, but he probably won't. Let's see what Smith here has to say.
Generation 3 of Pokemon is to this day regarded as one of the best installments in the Pokemon series.
Because
and
it is.
Despite that, even its most iconic title, Pokemon Emerald, does not hold up near as well as many people think. Today
How
I'm going
come?
to be analyzing and judging the
Tell me
major
why.
aspects of Emerald, including Pokemon, gym leaders, evil teams, rivals, and the Elite Four. And after looking at everything individually, I'm then going to put the whole analysis together and explain my big three issues with Emerald. But an important question to ask before we even get into it is, why? Am I just
why
some
do you care?
cranky old man yelling in the street looking for YouTube relevancy once more? Well,
Yes, because this title gets people to click on it.
no, you see, I actually
That's why I'm
really
watching.
love Pokemon Emerald. Do this. Part 1. An introduction
At least he
to
likes the
Hoenn.
games.
It's really important that we understand where Emerald sits in the Pokemon catalog if we're going to properly fix it.
Yep.
If anything can be
Third
said about
generation,
Generation
2001.
3, it's that it feels like the series' first fully fledged Pokemon game. If Gen 1 is Pokemon's alpha with low quality graphics full of bugs, then Gen 2's Johto is Pokemon's beta. A refinement of the core ideas, but unpolished and overall failing to nail the execution. I think it makes
I agree with this. This makes sense. Gen 2 is awful, just for the record.
sense to say then that Ruby and Sapphire sit as the franchise's version 1.0. And that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? If you think about what comes after these games, it's all very homogenous, but Gen 3 to 2 and even 1 has like a major lack of cohesion. This holds especially true
That's
from
fair.
a graphics perspective, but it's not just that. Ruby and Sapphire are the first games to feature a truly new roster of Pokemon. They've got the friendly rival trope, brand new evil teams, a world-ending plotline, a region disconnected from the previous game, and so on. Ruby and Sapphire gave so much to Pokemon, and I think they greatly
Yes.
defined the core formula
Yes, they
of
did.
a Pokemon game. But of course, as the initial 1.0 version launch of Hoenn, these games were still unperfect. Many of the gym leader teams are tragically built, the evil storyline is unfulfilling, and there's hardly any post-game content. And so if Ruby and Sapphire
That's
are
fair.
the game launch 1.0 version, then we could sort of look at Emerald as the game's first massive update. And unlike Pokemon and Crystal, which updated their generational launches quite minimally, Pokemon Emerald is the equivalent of a remastered nuke. So when I return to Emerald now, things just feel a little off. My experience doesn't quite line up with my nostalgic memories. Glaringly large problems that my 12-year-old brain was incapable of noticing at the time. And
What are-
finishing
what
these
are the
games as an adult
problems?
leaves me frustrated and just screaming too much water. Unfortunately, though, when it
You're
comes to Hoenn,
yapping.
water is the name of the game. So ladies and gentlemen, buckle in and prepare to dive a little deeper. Now,
I'm
all
ready.
good playthroughs
Thank
need the
you.
support of a
My
strong
God.
starter. As we're going to see, Mudkip is the best water starter to date. And you want a
Yep.
chair that is reliable as Mudkip. And that's where today's sponsor. Part 2. The starters. As
Yes,
your first
the
companion
starters.
partner, starters are possibly the biggest defining feature of a new generation. And so I think if
Definitely.
we're going to
I
start
would
anywhere,
agree.
we should start from the beginning, where the game sees the series professor being attacked by a level 2 Zigzagoon. Now, what I love about this scene is that it makes for a much more compelling starter selection than the previous games. Rather
Yes.
than making your choice in the safety of a lab, the game has you do it under pressure. And I really love this because it adds a bit of affirming weight to your decision. It's not
Yes, I do a premium, but the sponsor
just
still
pick
gets
which
it.
one looks cool, but being
Yeah.
forced to pick under
That's
pressure
true.
really affirms that decision, and I don't know, like maybe it makes your bond with your Pokemon stronger. Unfortunately though, I'm not a nerd. I'm an experienced ass player, and I know that there is only one right decision to make for your starter in Hoenn. And despite my love for the cute little guy, Mudkip is actually the very first problem with this game. And I should preface that it's not like starters have ever been
Why?
balanced, but compared to the first two gens,
Fuecoco
Generation 3
is
flubbed starter selection in a
broken.
very different way. In Generation 1, Bulbasaur was clearly the easy early game pick, and this effectively
Sure.
acted as the game's easy mode. This was
That's
fine though,
fair.
because eventually all 3 starters would grow into their own and become powerful. Now in Generation 2, all 3 starters were unequal again, but this was more so in a sense that one was bad and the other 2 were good. Generation 3 has
Poor
a much different
Chikorita.
approach.
I love Chikorita's design and Meganium's design. It just wasn't there in Gen 2.
3 has a much different approach, and I really think it hurts the game. The first
Why?
thing that Hoenn does different is give their starters very useful secondary typing. Outside of Poison and Flying, which do absolutely nothing for Venusaur and Charizard,
Yeah.
the starters had all felt very ingrained in their main type from the Elemental Trio. So,
Yeah.
adding a cool second type seems like a pretty good idea. The adorable baby
Yeah.
chick turns into a badass firefighting chicken. It's still chicken. The tadpole
It's a
frog
chicken.
looking thing gets ground type and turns into a destroyer of worlds.
Yeah, that's
And this
cool.
derpy looking green guy? Oh, you fool. You utter moron. What are you, a 12-year-old? You thought the grass starter was also gonna get a cool second type? Oh no, no, it's just grass. It's grass and nothing but grass for you, buddy. So even the most
I guess it's a little annoying. I really like the design of Sceptile, and I think Sceptile is one of my favorites, but the other two getting secondary typings and Sceptile not getting a secondary typing, I guess can be a little strange.
basic glance, it's clear that the 3 starters are not given equal treatment. And this might lead you to believe that it's just another Johto situation where 2 are good and the grass is once again bad. That is, however, not the case. I think the most broken thing about Mudkip is that it only has one weakness in grass type. And that still could have worked given that there were certain checks and balances added to the game. Like grass types. In the entire game, there are 4 Pokemon on major teams that can hit Swampert for super effective damage. Furthermore though, Swampert matches up really well against the gym leaders, evil teams, and elite.
What ice type does he get? You can TM learn Ice Beam. Kinda, I would argue against the ice. So yeah.
4. It can basically hit every major trainer but like Gym 2 and 8 for super effective damage, and a lot of that is Stab, Surf, and Earthquake. Like, it's not just the best starter, it's the best Pokemon in the game, period. Swampert is so seriously good that it hurts the starter selection, because when you don't go with Swampert, you have this sense of foregoing, the best Pokemon in the game. And I suppose that, like if the other 2 starters were still quite strong, that might still work. But this is also sadly not true. After Torchic gets...
Sure, but also your argument was that you're a 12-year-old. And the 12-year-old wants to choose the cool lizard. You, as an adult, feel like you're missing out on something because it's not the best. Then do challenge runs, do Nuzlocks to where it's like challenging, and Mudkip doesn't just sweep through the whole game because you over leveled. If you want to over level Sceptile and just like use Sceptile, then you should do it. But if you're an adult and you're like, man, if I choose Sceptile, I'm gonna miss out on the best Pokemon in the entire game. So what? Choose the cool lizard, man.
Fighting for the first rock gym, it really just can't do much more. It kind of gets its ass kicked in the Brawly fight, then it gets its ass handed to it in the Watson fight, and then despite having a resistance to fire, is out here getting one-tapped by Flannery. Oh, and then despite having type advantage over Norman, gets absolutely dusted. And this is the better half of its gym performances, because after that you've got Winona Flying, then Psychic, and then Water. Now, sure, Blaziken does come back pretty hard for the Elite Four. At least until Pokemon Emerald adds a water champion. And it also, to be fair, has a very solid performance against the evil teams. So it's bad, but yet somehow, someway, Trico is arguably worse.
I disagree. I don't think this is not the correct argument to make. You don't have a problem with the starters. All of the starters are fine. Your problem is with the movesets. The movesets of these Pokemon are dog. And Gen 3 movesets is probably the worst thing about Gen 3. But that's not Trico's fault. Also, Marshtomp doesn't get Earthquake until after the 7th gym. He has Tackle through like the 5th gym. You just use Surf and Mudshot for like the entire game. Swampert's moveset is also bad. The problem isn't the starters. The problem is Gen 3 movesets are bad. Pick the cool lizard because you like the cool lizard, and then don't feel bad that you're missing out on the best Pokemon in the game, which, by the way, the best Pokemon in the game has Tackle for the first 6 gyms.
Genuinely great to Roxanne and Tate and Liza, but that's kind of it. Like, there are 2 major trainers that specialize in water, and it's bad against both of them. The only thing that's menacing on Juan's team is a Kingdra, which knows Ice Beam and destroys Sceptile, and then Sceptile has one good matchup in the champion fight. Even worse is up until level 29, you're hitting everything with Absorb. I mean, it's
Yeah, up until level... Hold on. We use Mud Shot from level 16 until the end, until 46. That is 40 levels that we do not get a usable ground type move. And if we didn't get Surf, we would use Water Gun until level 37. This argument doesn't make sense. He destroys the rest of Huang. Just don't use Sceptile into the thing with Ice Beam.
I mean, its best move is 70 power versus Swampert's 95 and 100, or Blaziken's 90 and 100. And let me say it again, you also don't get a second type. So hopefully I have made a compelling case as to why these starters are unbalanced. But is that an actual problem, you might ask? Do they need to be balanced?
No, because Fuecoco exists.
Honestly, no, they don't.
Yeah.
The real problem is in how wide the gap is. If Bulbasaur,
No, there's no gap. You just learn Surf. The problem is the movesets.
Squirtle, and Charmander acted as an easy, medium, hard mode, Mudkip in Emerald is basically Super Weenie Hut Jr., with the other 2 starters then being hard mode. And while the starters
No, it's not. Trico's fine.
are very weirdly
Blaziken, I would
balanced,
argue,
this
is harder
far
to
from the
use.
only set of Pokemon that see this. Part 3. Team building and Pokemon balance. Your options for team building are another feature of Gen 3 that is integral to its design. There is basically one small group of Pokemon that work really good for playing these games. This is that group of Pokemon, like, you know exactly which ones I'm talking about. When we think about how we used to play Emerald, we think of that team, right? And we think, yeah, that was great. But if you ever have played Emerald with not those 10 Pokemon,
What's
it's a
the
very
team?
different experience. The
Yeah.
options fall off quite drastically, and there's not really a rhyme or reason as to why some Pokemon are good and some are bad. To give you a really simple example, let's take a look at the Gen 3 bird Pokemon, Tailo and Swablu. Tailo is available at the start of the game, evolves at level 22, and gets its first strong flying move, Wing Attack, at just level 13. For context, that is so far above and beyond what we saw in the previous.
Yeah, putting Emerald Kaizo there, like playing with Trico, is some impossible godlike challenge.
And it does show the series finally starting to evolve towards accepting good moves as a standard. The problem in Emerald is that this treatment has not yet become uniform. Comparatively, Swablu is caught all the way after the 3rd gym, evolves at level 35, and is stuck with the move Peck forever. Or, you know, at least until the 5th gym when you get Fly. But let's take another example.
No, that's disingenuous. It evolves into Altaria, which is a dragon type that gets Dragon Dance and Air Slash and the ability and Fly. Altaria can learn coverage moves by TMs. They're just different styles of Pokemon. It's not a disparity in power. It's a disparity in ideology for the Pokemon, for the use cases of them.
Curling. It's got low stats, but it does at least get a crazy early Psychic at level 26. Comparatively, Grumpig and Alakazam get it in the late 30s. Now, things may not be perfectly equal here, but given Curlia's relative trade-off with bad stats, it does actually make sense. But how about Solrock? Never learns it. Meditite? Never learns it. Shirley.
Meditite's a fighting type, I thought.
After 3 generations,
Oh no, it's a fighting style.
never learns it. And guys, I could and will go on and on.
I think this man could use a crash course in game design. Every Pokemon being exactly as good as each other with the exact same uses would make a painfully boring game. I agree.
Nuzleaf, that's right, Nuzleaf never learns a single grass move.
Okay, he's right. We can give him that. Delete this Pokemon from existence. It's never gotten any better. We can agree on this.
Dusclops never learned Shadow Ball.
But, like, Shadow Punch is fine. It gets Shadow Punch at 37, which is a 60 power ghost type move with stab that never misses. Like, that's fine.
Never learned Shadow Ball.
Yeah, but it learns...
Mawile, where are your steel moves?
Okay, Mawile Mawile is not very good.
Manectric, no Thunderbolt?
Yeah. It not learning Thunderbolt's a little annoying, and you have to use your Thunderbolt TM strategically. Not every Pokemon needs the iconic move for their type. Yeah, I agree.
Ninjask, have you forgot about your bug and flying moves?
There's no good bug moves in this generation. Bug Bite doesn't exist. Big Buzz, I'm pretty sure Big Buzz doesn't exist yet.
Like, it's one thing for us to clown on Gen 1 learn sets, because those were the first games.
Yeah.
We are in the 3rd generation. What is going on? And just as a thought experiment, I want to next look at what Pokemon are actually good in this game.
Yeah.
So the water type, which makes up the majority of...
No, you had it. You figured it out. No. It's not the problem with the Pokemon in team building.
Like, it's one thing for us to clown on Gen 1 learn sets, because those were the first games.
Yes.
But we are in the 3rd generation.
Yes.
What is going on?
That's where your problem is. It's the learn sets. It's not the starters. It's not the team building. It's not the design. The learn sets in this game sucks.
And just as a thought experiment, I want to next look at what Pokemon are actually
He figured it out.
Start with the water type, which makes
12
up
minutes
the majority
in
of this list. You've got Swampert at home, Gyarados, Tentacruel, Wailord.
Yeah, wait, can we go back?
Are actually good in this game. To start with the water type, which makes up the majority of this list, you've got Swampert at home.
That's a good joke. I like that. He's talking about the good ones.
Of this list, you've got Swampert,
good,
Swampert at home,
fine,
Gyarados,
good,
Tentacruel,
good,
Wailord,
yeah,
Melodic,
yeah,
Starmie,
yeah,
Lantern, Kingdra,
yeah,
and Walrein.
Yeah.
That's good, except for the fact that everything after Swampert is invalidated by Swampert, but maybe Walrein.
Also, no, Gyarados is not invalidated. Gyarados is cracked. Swampert's good. Gyarados is amazing. Walrein is good. Lantern's good. The rest of those are kind of invalidated by how good those 4 are. So that makes sense.
Outside of the water category, things then get really bleak. You've got Guts, Facade, Swellow, Gardevoir, Breloom, Hariyama, Aggron, Skarmory, Manectric, Flygon, Magneton, and Salamence for the very end of the game.
Okay.
Was that your list, by the way? Like, that had to be at least half of the Pokemon that you always ran as a kid in Emerald. Anyway, that's like
as a child, yes.
Genuinely good Pokemon. Like,
no.
There are some other semi-decent picks in certain scenarios.
Okay.
Like Crobat, Claydol,
Crobat's amazing. Claydol's very good. Crobat's fine. Tropius is
most of Gen 3's good Pokemon are water type, and those ones are only good due to having decent stats plus access to Surf and probably Ice Beam. And then outside of that, there's just like not a lot of options. So, clearly we're getting to the point where type distribution is starting to become an obvious problem. And when you actually break it down,
also no Meryl on any of those lists.
It's like really funny. Okay, so not counting legendaries or post-game catches, just the actual usable Pokemon. Water type has 22 total unique families.
Okay.
The second most abundant type in the game is Flying and Psychic with 13. Then it's normal.
Also, Altaria not being on that list. Altaria is great.
Normal with 12, followed by Rock at 11, and Grass at 10.
Also, Ludicolo is a great Pokemon.
Bug, Poison, and Ground all have 9 families, while Dark has a respectable 7 families, all introduced in Generation 3. So that's, fine. This then takes us down to the very, very sad tier. Fighting sees just 6 families in Blaziken, Breloom, Hariyama, Medicham, Machamp, and Heracross. Yeah, it was a bit of a shock to me too, but Heracross is in this game. But Electric sees an even sadder roster of 6, with Electrode, Pikachu, and Magneton making up half the list. Lantern is the Johto rep, and then I refuse to count Puzzle and Minun as 2 unique Pokemon. They're so bad, I actually might argue they don't count as Pokemon at all. This is Shiny Blue Pichu and Shiny Red Pichu. But
based. True. Based and true. Based and true. Best thing he said so far.
So yeah, basically only new Hoenn electric type is Manectric. The fire
no, that's right.
is in an even worse spot with 5. You've got Blaze.
Yeah, the lack of fire is obnoxious, but there is nothing good. There's nothing that is good or that fire is good for. I have never in the Nuzlocke been like, man, if only I had a fire type here, which I guess is lacking in the game design.
Camerupt, Ninetales, and
Camerup's good.
Magcargo, Ghosticious 4 in Shedinja's, Sableye, Banette, and Dusclops.
Dusclops is the only viable option there.
Dragon sees 4 as well, but with, 3 new dragon types. I think that's actually amazing. Still,
yes, Altaria and Flygon are good.
3 new types is a little more disappointing, however. Worse than that, though, there is a type in Pokemon Emerald that only...
I agree with a lot of the points he's saying in the type distribution.
3 members belonging to it. One of which is a legendary, which effectively takes this number down to 2. It is the Ice type, held down by nothing but Glalie and Walrein. And so, on top of poor move balance, poorly statted Pokemon, the third and final issue of team building and Pokemon balance is just in the actual distribution itself.
This isn't a Gen 3 issue. This is just an overall Pokemon issue. Type distribution has always been skewed. Yeah, I agree.
These three things sort of come
But-
together, and it makes Emerald like this just purely uniform experience where every single kid remembers having a Thunderbolt Gardevoir. The problem
Yeah, and that's cool.
being is that if you ever try to use a Pokemon that you actually just like and it's not one of the good 10, you just have a very bad time. And even
No, you don't. Mighty Anna, we bring Mighty Anna to so many fights in the Nuzlocke. He doesn't mention Ludicolo. He doesn't mention Mighty Anna, Intimidate. Like, there is more than 10.
just like and it's not one of the good 10,
You can do
just have
that.
a very bad time.
You could do that. Alpharad literally just did a video about this.
Even worse is all these issues kind of come together to make another big problem in the game, which is the actual opponent teams. Part 4, Gym Leaders.
This section, I feel like the only relevant information is that the move pools in this game are dog, which we all know, and I agree with. Type distribution isn't that great, and it's very water skewed, but also, like Tim Bourne said, that's not a Pokemon. That's not an Emerald problem, that's a Pokemon problem.
Roxanne is the game's first gym leader, who some may say specializes in rock type. However, it's hard to tell as this may in fact just be the Geodude gym. Rustboro features 8 Pokemon, and of which 7 are Geodude. Now overall, Emerald did do a really good job of revamping Ruby Sapphire's gym leader teams. With Roxanne though, they just gave her another Geodude. And so as far as building an interesting roster goes, Roxanne's a bit of a problem. And guys, it's important to remember here, it's not Geodude's fault, but actually Game Freak's. Many rock-type members of Hoenn just simply aren't suited for the first gym. Relicanth, Corsola, Magcargo, Lunatone, and Solrock are all single-stage rock types that have way too high stats. There are, however, still some better options than Geodude. There's Rock Steel Aeron, who is still weak to water and fighting. There's Rhyhorn, which hardly has better stats than Geodude and never appears in the game. And you've also got the 2 fossils, Lileep and Anorith, who's, by the way, bug type and grass type second typing. Like, that would have been so cool. You know,
Don't put the fossils in the first gym. Disagree with that. Steel in the first gym is evil. I agree. But he's also right. They should have just designed another rock type for Roxanne.
because then you couldn't just spam a water or a grass move. Crazy. But no, they just did Geodude. Now, I will say that
It's the first gym, man. It's supposed to be easy. Also, putting Aeron in the first gym, I think is cool. I like that idea.
Nosepass is certainly a step up from Gen 1's Onyx, and I do think it provides a genuine challenge. So for the first gym, this is certainly not a nothing fight. It is somewhat engaging, and despite my criticism, I still think it's good enough because it's the first gym to go into the B tier.
Gen 1 first gym, just spam water moves. Gen 9 first gym, spam fire moves. First gym just meant to be like that.
The
Yeah.
second
yeah.
gym leader Brawley has a team
They should have given her 6 Mega
consisting of
Agrons.
Machop,
No.
Meditite, and Makuhita, which
Yeah,
are
this
the
is
game's
good.
only 2 new first stage fighting types.
Yeah.
With 2 of the 4 available fighting types being final stage evolutions, we see ourselves in another weird kind of Roxanne situation. Right? Imagine this as like a Gym 6 fight with a Breloom, Heracross. Would have been a lot cooler. Now, despite this though, I am still pretty satisfied with
Right. Not all of them can be Gym 9, though.
what Brawley brings. Bulk up is his main strategy, and it's the first instance of many Emerald trainers with stat boosting moves, which means that this is the first time the player faces a serious threat of wiping. Now, it's unfortunate that the meta type does absolutely nothing because it just spams Focus Punch, but
That is a little bit annoying. I think the AI should have not spammed Focus Punch.
I think Makuhita is enough to still bring the heat and make this a relatively interesting fight. Biggest issues with Brawley is actually the junior trainers, parties, and lack of XP. The only thing in this gym are the 3 Pokemon on his team, and if you fight everyone, which you definitely need to, there is very little XP still between him and Roxanne. Overall, Brawley manages to be a strong
Just use candies, bro.
yet fair gym leader though, so I would put him in the A tier. Now, Watson sees a big upgrade from his original Surge 2.0 team,
Yes.
but this comes with other problems. Now, I've just decided to throw a random tier list into this video. It's a ranking every gym leader video too, a little extra value. But I should just preface, like, this tier list, this ranking, it's all about, like, what fight is fun? To me, fun is just a thing of like, is it engaging enough that I have to really think, and thinking, am I rewarded for my decisions? Difficulty is very important in the fun components, but there's fair difficulty and unfair difficulty. And as soon as something starts to feel unfair, it becomes very unfun. Watson is an example of a gym leader that is difficult, but not fun. First,
What? We just spent the first 12 minutes of this video whining that Mudkip is the only viable starter. And you cannot then turn around and say that Watson is difficult.
the Voltorb has self-destruct, like 6 levels before it actually learns it, and with such high speed, it's just very likely to wreck one of your Pokemon. Now,
Yeah, plan around it.
the first Manectric is totally fine, but the next absurd thing is Magneton. It's incredibly underleveled for its Evo, and it isn't even the gym's ace. Now, I get that Manectric should be evolved. This is the 3rd gym. We probably want a final stage evolution, but why do you give that to Magneton as well? Manectric is very strong, and if you don't have a ground or grass
What?
type, the only Pokemon which can take more than 2 hits from its Shockwave is a level 24 Hariyama. And that just sort of makes us beg the question, why is this team so strong? Well, this team is probably so strong because of Mudkip.
Okay, yes, correct.
Even with so many strong Pokemon, Marshtomp can just sweep. With Marshtomp,
Yeah.
or Geodude for that matter, this gym is really easy. The problem is that without a ground type, it is absurdly hard, and there's nothing in the area that you can catch to make it easier. Instead, you have to go all the way back to Dewford Cave and pick up a level 8 Geodude. To me, this all works together to create what is a very bad gym leader experience. Under a very specific set of circumstances, it is incredibly easy. Unfortunately, though not
I'm gonna
rewarding,
hear 'em
in
out,
its ease,
but I have
and
a lot
outside of that, it's just unfairly balanced for the point that you are in the game. So for all these reasons, I would actually put Watson in the D tier. Fortunately,
Okay, no, wrong. The fact that you could just use Mudkip through that whole gym and win is a little bit obnoxious, and I understand his point. But also, you're not shit out of luck. The fun thing about Pokemon for me when I was a child is that backtracking. Is that like, I am struggling with this. Let me go back and let me see what I can do. Let me go forward and see if I can catch something stronger ahead of where I am, and then come back, maybe exploring the Pokemon universe and exploring the map of Emerald was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. And it's like, it's a good puzzle to solve. It's difficult, but you just complained about Roxanne being dog shit easy because you could just spam water type moves. But the fact that you can spam ground type moves through Watson and make it dog shit easy is bad. It can't be a bad thing that Watson and Roxanne can be spammed with single type moves and win, and the alternative is it being a challenge and you actually having to team build also can't be bad. Both of those things can't be bad, because then how do you win? I just don't agree.
Emerald manages to come back with Flannery, showing some of the best fights in the game.
I disagree. Flannery is boring. There's 22 water types and you just spam the water type moves. Flannery is arguably one of the worst gym leaders.
Flannery features a really cool sun weather team. What's so great about it is it's before the game's water options really open up. Her team feels genuine.
No, it doesn't. Pelipper, Marshtomp, Azumarill, Gyarados, Tentacruel. You can also bring the ground types are also weak to water. So we bring Numel, we bring Marshtomp, we bring Geodude. No. Incorrect.
Diverse, and she uses a unique strategy which can be overcome in many different ways. Marshtomp, Azumarill, Pelipper, and Tentacruel are
Literally just what I said.
all solid water options, but there is, again, not an overabundance, and more importantly, no surf. There's also other
That's
non-water
fine.
options to help, like Torkoal, Numel, and Geodude.
Literally all of the things I just said. I should let the guy talk.
And you have been given a Rock Tomb TM, so it's not like you have absolutely no answers against her. It's similarly difficult to Watson, but the thing is that it provides many more ways to win. The Sun plus Flannery's White Herb Torkoal makes her very threatening, but
No. The White Orb Torkoal is threatening.
there are many readily available options of how to play around it. It's a very rewarding gym, and so she's the first of 4 trainers that I would place in the S tier. And
I don't understand where this guy is coming from. He has said the same thing 3 times and put all of them in different categories.
following her up is Norman, who is once again
Norman is the best gym leader in this game. by far.
Again, an incredibly hard challenge that has many
Yes.
ways to beat him. First
Yes.
of all, I love the team. The inclusion of both family members, Slacking and Vigoroth, actually makes sense here, as they feel like genuinely different Pokemon. Linu,
Because they are.
Bellydrum, and even Linda the Spinda somehow manages to feel at home here. Now, with
Yes.
670 base stats, Slacking is obviously the terrifying member of the group, but the key thing is that its truant ability makes it a very unique challenge. Brute forcing your way through this fight is very tough, so you need to think outside the box.
Yeah,
There's
don't
a
brute
strategy
force
that
it.
involves having a Pokemon use Protect on Slacking's turn, and then they attack on Slacking's Truant turn. You can also pull off a similar strategy with the Desert Pokemon that knows Dig. There's even crazier stuff like using Golbat to land Confuse Ray, then Double Team, and finally Bite Flinching to just destroy his chances of hitting you. Sure, you could say Norman isn't that interesting because you can just cheese him with Protect. The difference in Norman and Watson is that the way to beat Watson is just to pick the good starter. That is really simple.
Or build a team. Or do the trial and error and build the team. Sure, just picking the good starter makes sense, but like if you're, I don't know.
That doesn't take any thought whatsoever. But let's be honest.
No, it doesn't.
How
That's
many
fine.
of us were smart enough at 12 to think of using Protect strats? That's really the key difference in why Norman works so well and Watson doesn't.
I mean, not to brag, but like me, I used Protect on Norman.
Norman is another just banging fight. I gotta send him to the S tier.
I do agree, though, Norman is very good. The Vigoroth, I mean, is scarier than the Slaking, so I'm not sure why he talked about the Slaking so much. Vigoroth has insane stats, just like Slacking, but it doesn't have Truant, and it has Slash, which has high critical hit ratios, with still crazy amounts of damage. Teeter Dance is annoying, where you either have to do switch strats or you have to use a berry slot for a confusion healing berry, which I think is interesting. The Lanoon Belly Drum, if you don't just hit it right away, can sweep with Slash again. I think he is correct, and that Norman is a S tier gym leader. I agree.
Leader Winona is unfortunately a step back, however. To start, her Swablu lead gives players free reign to set up, and it's especially frustrating when you realize it
Let's keep
was
going.
swapped from Swellow in Ruby and Sapphire. Even worse, Tropius shares a 4 times ice weakness with Altaria, and its Sunny Day works against her Water Pelipper, which is of course the next Pokemon out. Pelipper also just kind of sucks with Water Gun and Protect with no stall strats. Skarmory is a solid member
I agree. Yeah.
of the team, but it's really Altaria that carries here. Dragonance
Oh,
Altaria
yeah.
is a threat, but it's just not enough for this point in the game. The last 2 gyms have featured these really cool fights that are more than just a mono-type challenge. They bring a seriously unique addition to the fight, and all Winona has is a Pokemon that can set up and sweep you, which, is like Gym 2 energy. I feel like what this gym really needs is like Tailwind or something, but especially coming off those
Tailwind doesnh does Tailwind exist in Gen 3?
last 2
No.
fights. The bar has been set. Winona, you don't reach the bar. To the C tier you go. From here, though, we've got Tate and Liza, and oh boy.
Wait, we're not going to talk about Winona? Is that all we're talking about Winona? The Swablu is a joke. I think they should take the Swablu out. Tropius is an interesting thing because it sets up Sunny Day Solar Beam. Again, all of these mons are interesting and could be pretty cool and could be interesting, but all of their movesets are bad. Also, the Altaria is terrifying. Dragon Dance Earthquake, it just sweeps everything. And then you Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace never missing, so you can't do double team strats. Dragon Breath does a lot of damage on stab, so you have to plan for it to not Earthquake your life away, which then Gyarados comes into play. But Gyarados doesn't get good moves yet. It doesn't have Dragon Breath. So you think about putting the Thunderbolt TM on Gyarados, because Gyarados is flying type and doesn't get hit by the Earthquake. There's genuinely interesting decisions to be made around the Altaria, though the rest of her team is bad.
Winona, you don't reach the bar. To the C tier you go.
She's
From here, though,
B tier.
we've got Tate and
She's
Liza.
fine.
Oh boy, do things pick up. So, first major double battle of the game, and Game Freak is just like, gloves off. We're going as competitive as we possibly can. Is it a little bit too much? There's a case to be made for it, but if you're kind of tracking the difficulty curve from like Brawly to Flannery to Norman, this is kind of the next logical step. This fight goes so hard. I have been wrecked by Tate and Liza so many times, but it's good. It's fun. Like, I have so many options to deal with these people, and I'm losing because I'm bad, not because it's unfair. Okay,
I think you're losing to Watson because you're bad as well.
guys, you gotta let me gush for just like 30 seconds. Right, we start the fight, it's a Claydol Xatu lead. Flying type Xatu goes for the Calm Mind setup, while Claydol sends off an Earthquake that only affects your side. This just sets the stage so well, it's instantly tense where you're like, gotta make a decision of which one I'm gonna kill. You know, am I gonna let Xatu just set up and absolutely destroy me? Because if I don't want that to happen, I'm gonna have to keep taking Earthquakes to the face. And you know, whichever one you choose to take out is still scary, because it's either Lunatone next or Solrock. Lunatone runs Light Screen, Calm Mind, and Hypnosis, so while it is walled by a Dark type, it can still really help out this team. Solrock, on the other hand, can set Sun
That's probably why you're losing.
to nerf Water. By the way, spamming Surf is probably one of your best options for this fight. It's just
we were gonna get
such
there.
a well-crafted fight. It makes me question why all Emerald fights couldn't be this fun. Probably obvious, but once again, it's another S tier.
You didn't gush at all. There's so much more to talk about. Like you said, just spam Surf. I agree that this is an S tier fight. If you just have 6 water types and you don't care about losing Pokemon, like it's not a Nuzlocke, then you just spam Surf the whole thing. You lead Gyarados Pelipper because both of them are not affected by Earthquake, and then one of them just gets sacrificed to the Ancient Power to get off a Surf. He said what the problem with this gym is if you're not doing any type of challenge. And I think he's spitting facts about the Sunny Day, Earthquake is scary, Calm Mind is good, the Sunny Day Solar Beam on Solrock is interesting, Hypnosis Calm Mind on Lunatone is really cool.
Spamming Surf is probably
Yeah.
one of your best options for this fight.
There you go, you
It's
just said it.
just such a well
And what's the difference between spamming Surf and spamming Mudshot on Watson? Like I don't know where he's going.
crafted fight.
It
makes
is
me
well
question
crafted.
Why this, but once again, it's another S tier. Juan is a little different though. So in Pokemon Emerald,
Juan's a joke.
Wallace, the
I think we're gonna
8-year-old
agree on
Pokemon
this.
Sapphire, moves to champion, and his mentor Juan, who is also a water specialist, fills the slot. Now, before we even get looking to the team, this is just a huge problem. You've got the 3rd Elite 4-member Glacio with 3 water members. You've now got a water champion, considering also that Team Aqua is in this section of the game, and now you've got a water 8th gym leader. Water is just bloated, and I'm a little sponge, and I'm just waterlogged. I can't take any more water than this, and honestly, Juan, okay, this is stupid, let's just get into it. I think my least favorite thing outside of Juan's water bloat is that he doesn't even have a unique or compelling team. Like, how can you make an argument that this is anything but a collection of 5 randomly chosen Pokemon? Like, I think people want to say that this is a contest-based team. Here's the thing, Juan, this is a Pokemon battle. Okay, so Juan has a Love Disc to set, which is hilarious, but this is his one unique Pokemon. Whiscash is seen on Wallace's team, Crawdad is on Sydney's, there's 2 Celios on Glacia's, and Drake has a Kingdra. There was just no way that Juan could have worked. Because you have a water champion, you simply can't make the water 8th gym leader compelling. He's not gonna get the Pokemon that you want to give him, and he has to be noticeably worse. Otherwise, he would outshine the champion. Yet despite this, I still have a whole other paragraph of issues with Juan. Let's talk about the Kingdra in the room. With only a dragon weakness, double team, and rest, Juan's Kingdra is really hard to kill. Especially with that Chesto Berry to instantly wake up on the first rest. This is a cooked oat ace. And if that was it, I would genuinely say, fine. Well, at least he's got one good Pokemon. The problem, though, is not Kingdra double teaming twice and then healing up with rest. See, Juan has 2 Hyper Potions, and it's the instances where you have to then whittle Kingdra's health down 3 more times while it has a 25% chance to be hit after 6 double teams. Remember I was saying, like, I want to have fun in Pokemon? Not fun. Not a good time. Unfortunately, this little mishmash of stuff going on kind of results in it being my least favorite fight in the entire game. I hate Juan so much that I will go out of my way to just pick up a random Gyarados from a Super Rod, spam Dragon Dance 6 times on the Love Disc, and just sweep, because otherwise I'm just gonna have a bad time. And it's not even like it's the major water trainer, so like I'm not even missing out on a good time. It's so stupid. Look, here's the key points. Emerald's gym as a
Okay, he's spitting. This gym leader sucks. I have no notes. You cannot have a good gym leader that is water and then also have a good champion that is water type. Pick up a random Gyarados. Why aren't you using Gyarados through the whole game? God, at the last... God, I'm going to have to go all the way back to the 2nd gym, and I'm at the 8th gym and pick up a Gyarados? Ugh. Why don't you have Gyarados before that? Those are my only notes.
It's so stupid. Look,
I
here's the
agree.
points.
I don't
Emerald's
like
gym as a whole
Juan.
are a very mixed bag. They're at
Yes.
their best when their monotype strategy is accentuated with a second unique defining experience.
Okay.
You know, a fire team in the sun, a competitive psychic double battle, or
I
simply
like it.
just a grossly strong normal Pokemon that can only attack every second turn.
No, that's not the scary one. The Vigoroth is the scary one.
Emerald's gyms are at its worst when it's featuring bland, uncohesive teams or
How is that not a bland... Okay, I think my major hang-up with his analysis, I agree with a lot of what he's saying. My major hang-up on his entire analysis is Watson is not a bad gym fight. Worst take in this video.
providing the player with just an unfair and frustrating challenge. The gyms
It's not unfair though. I just disagree with his take on Watson.
attempt to set a precedent of extremely powerful teams with really the first instance of genuinely competitive movesets. Unfortunately, not every fight can live up to that standard, and there
Movesets
are
are
even
bad.
worse situations than with the gym leaders. Part 5. Team Aqua and Team Magma. Despite my criticism, the Emerald Gym League at least manages to almost always be interesting. This cannot be said
Sure.
for Team Aqua or Magma. We first fight an Aqua Grunt in Petalburg Woods, and it's a nice introduction. We then see Aqua again in Slateport, and it's nothing crazy, but, you know, still the early game. From there, it's Mount Chimney, where we're introduced to Team Magma, and we get an Admin and Maxi fight here, which is the first inklings of anything serious. Next, it's the Weather Institute with Admin Shelly and just 2 Pokemon. And see, if I look at the challenge that these sets of teams provide, and, you know, compared to, say, Ruby and Sapphire Gen 2 or Gen 1, it's an improvement, but compared to the challenge that gym leaders are providing at this point, these fights are nothing. And it's the next 4 and final segments, because I think there's 4 that are forgettable. But anyway, it's the last stretch of the team arcs that are garbage. Because through the corridors and walkways of the Space Center, Aqua Hideout, Magma Hideout, and finally Seafloor Cavern, the grunts are garbage. It's like every corner you're running into Zubats and Poochyenas 15 levels past their evolution. And it's really interesting because this kind of relates back to type distribution. As we stated before, there's only 5 fire families in the game. Now, Blaziken is a starter, so that can't be featured. Torkoal is Gym Leader Ace, so that's out too. But for some reason, Magcargo and Ninetales just don't want to appear. As for more ground-focused Pokemon, it's really just Baltoy. And outside of that, the only other Pokemon
What about Numble?
featured in any Magma fight whatsoever is from the Zubat and Poochyenna line. And if you're expecting Team Aqua to be any better, it's actually worse. Despite the 22 water families in this game, the only Pokemon families which appear on Aqua teams are Poochyenna, Zubat, Carvana, and 1 single Wailmer on a random grunt. And
That's
again,
funny.
that is
I didn't
every
know
grunt,
that.
every admin, and Archie. 3 Pokemon for the whole team. And basically
Archie has Sharpedo.
5 Pokemon for both groups together. Like, I guess on top of just some bad type distribution, it was about them not wanting to make some Pokemon appear
There's literally a Sharpedo right there. Unless he was saying families. Unless he was saying Pokemon evolution lines. 5 Pokemon evolution lines.
evil. But it's like, dude, Aqua could easily have run, I don't know, Gyarados, Golduck, Tentacruel, maybe Crawdont. Same can be said for Magma. Where is Geodude, Sandshrew, Trapinch, Claydol, Rhydon, Donphan, Magcargo? There's so many stylistically appropriate choices here, but instead the evil team sections of the game do nothing but destroy Emerald's pacing. The grunts are utterly useless, and the major fights just don't have the weight to really make the segment rewarding. Like, both Maxi and Archie's teams only have 3 Pokemon, and it's of course Crobat and Mightyena, and then either Sharpedo or Camerupt. They have the best music in the game and couldn't even make good teams in the 3rd title. Just send them to the F tier. Part 6.
I have no notes. Everything about the grunt fights in every single Pokemon game of all time ever is bad. He hit the nail on the head with that one. And I do also want to go back and mention this fight should have been so much better. The whole point of this is that Archie, he's not fighting you, he's dodging you, he isn't fighting you, but he's intimidating you, he's threatening you. And then when you finally fight him, after the entire game has happened, and you're in front of Kyogre, his team is dog. This is a unbelievably missed opportunity.
Part 6. The Rival. Arguably the only part of this game that feels more
Wait, is he complaining about the rival?
to the F tier. Part 6. The Rival. Arguably the only part of this game that feels more half-baked than the evil teams are the game's rivals Brendan or May. Now, outside of being helpful and actually kind, the game's rivals fill a very similar role in the early game. Follow the classic pick which strider is strong against yours trope and provide some early game fights. It's as the game goes on that the rival starts to get a little different. Like, check out this team. It's what from about halfway through the game. Does anything look weird to you? Well, this was actually a little trick, because the team you're seeing on screen is actually the rival's final fight. This team is fought after getting 6 badges and is the climactic finale to your rival. 4 Pokemon and an unevolved starter as an optional battle in Lily Cove. Now, I know what you're going to say. The rival's character arc is supposed to show them growing out of battling and getting more interested in completing their Pokedex. And it's true. After this fight, they basically say they're not really interested in battling and they're gonna head back home. Personally, I think this is an admirable and appropriate direction to take with this rival, but despite that, I do think it still leaves a lot to be desired. Not even getting to see the final stage evolution is very sad, but I can understand that this isn't totally without reason. And that's because the game is trying to set up another character to then become your true rival. Wally starts the game as a brand new Pokemon trainer, not much different from the player. He mirrors us and has an arc which ultimately places him as the big main challenge before the league. It's trying to be a very compelling story. He picks up a Ralts and is then seen struggling as a beginner trainer when we battle him outside the Mauville Gym. He then evolves his Ralts into Gardevoir, picks up an Altaria, Delcadia, Roselia, and Magneton, beats all the gyms, and goes on to reach Evergrande City and challenges for a second gym gallery for Victory Road. Sorry, did you
Cite the source.
miss that? Because, yeah, me too. So look, it's clear what they were going for, but it all happens a little sudden. The very start of the game introduces our classic rival, but this time there is a slight twist of them not being a jerkbag. The rival does fight you, but it's clear that they're not as gung-ho as battling as the last two. They have other interests, they move on from battling, and this kind of goes to support the whole idea that it's not always about training if you don't want to, and that you can go catch the Pokemon and it's all good. But see, it's not instantly obvious that this is where it's going, and so there is a fake out here. This is the third rival we've seen, so they go for something different. Brendan or May are not your rival, but instead it's that random trainer that you thought was just part of the catching tutorial. And while not becoming champion level twist cool, I honestly think that this is a great idea. The problem is just that it's not handled very well. The rival doesn't have any grand exit. In my experience, it just kind of felt like they fade and are then forgotten. Wally then showing up as the final rival fight in Victory Road could have still made for a good replacement, but the moment lacks oomph for 2 reasons. The first is that Wally's team just isn't that good. Roselia and Delcadia are kind of tragic, and Altaria and Magneton get wrecked by 4x weaknesses. Considering how hard some of the gyms are, and that Wally actually caps lower than 1, the fight does fall pretty flat, but more importantly, I just don't think Wally appears enough for him to really be cemented as a main character in the story. He's seen twice and only fought once before the big final showdown. I remember playing Sapphire for the first time as a kid and not even knowing who this Victory Road challenger was. And so while I respect what they were going for, the rival fakeout just doesn't have the oomph I want it to. The one thing I will say for those, eagerly awaiting Emerald Legacy is a lot of potential here. Anyway, as far as Emerald goes, we're gonna throw Wally into the B tier, and May's gonna go in C. Part 7.
I agree. I think that if we got another Wally fight, because we fight him in Mawile, if we got a Wally fight in front of Tate and Liza's gym, that would be cool. And I agree with everything he's saying. Okay.
The Elite Four.
Part 7.
First 2 generations of Pokemon struggled to
Elite
deliver
Four.
a challenge
Let's go.
to Elite Four, and
Agreed.
Emerald shows Game Freak's continued struggle with this element of design. Like,
What?
outside of just not being very hard, Sydney is a bit of a nothing burger.
Sure.
Grass dark types are pretty boring, while the redundant appearance of Mightyena is really enough to make me throw up at this point.
Why? Mightyena is the staple. I think Mightyena being on this team is cool.
Absol can be scary with Swords Dance, but its lack of stab move and dark type being special just makes it a pretty sad ace. For the first member, it's fine. You know, that is if you compare it to any other game but the one it's in. It's like gym leaders, Watson, Flannery, Tate and Liza, Norman, really hard. This is kind of like going back to like Ruby, Sapphire, Crystal, sort of just like stupid, easy, oh, it's a monotype, dark type team. Now, Phoebe is next, and while her team
It's not monotype. I agree. Cindy's a joke.
is built better, it's also much more boring. Phoebe sadly just has 2 Bannettes, 2 Dusclops, and a Sableye. And while this team mostly suffers from repeat fatigue, it at least does have solid coverage, but that's really it. It's like, if you know there are only 4 ghost types in the game, and you're just, you know, against using Shedinja, why make a Ghost E4 member? We saw that
True. Based. True.
with Agatha in Gen 1. It wasn't good. You know, maybe you could order the major bosses of the game in a way such that they actually have enough Pokemon to construct a full team. Just saying. No grass type specialist, a lot of grass types. And what's crazy is this problem only gets worse with Glacia. What, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, is Game Freak's obsession with putting ice types as a late game enemy. Ice type is bad. As an opponent, it is very easy to fight very, very many weaknesses. And yet for some reason, like, every single Pokemon game has ice as a late game boss. The trend may not have started here, but it is certainly at its worst here. Glacia has just 2 family members, 2 of which are unevolved, and 3 of which that are water types. Also, she runs Hail strats in a game where Hail does nothing but cause chip damage to any Pokemon that is not ice type. 4th gym, 3rd Elite 4 member.
But what is your problem with hail strats? They just set up hail, and you take damage, and they don't take damage.
Almost sometimes feel like these first 3 E4 members are worse than the evil teams because I have such high expectations. The E4 is just an extension of the gym
I don't think that they're worse than the evil teams.
league. It's so disappointing to see them bring such awesomeness to the gyms, and then these first 3 E4 members are just complete boring. Anyway, it
I agree.
is eventually redeemed in the 4th Elite 4 fight with Drake. Part of which I think is because the first 2 generations have 3 Dragon Master fights that feature very, very bad teams. So Drake with 4 unique Pokemon, 3 of which being actual new generational additions, like, it just feels so good. Like, sure, he's got 3-4 times ice weaknesses, but this is kind of the name of the game with dragon types. Kingdra fortunately does a lot for him here, and could Shelgon be better? Yes, but at least Pure Dragon provides something unique that isn't getting one-shot by ice. Drake is a really solid trainer, and he deserves A tier. But
I agree. There's some good stuff. There's some bad stuff about Drake. He's not nearly as bad as the first 3.
what about Wallace? Well, honestly, I really like him. Wallace's team has iconic members, good moves, and
No. Wallace is a strict downgrade from Steven.
best of all, strong secondary typing. You can't sweep with grass because of Gyarados, Tentacruel, and Ludicolo. Can't sweep with an electric because of Ludicolo and Whiscash. And then the 2 pure water types on each end are better because of that. In fact, this is such a well-built water team that I'm not sure I would change anything. Wallace's champion team is easily the best constructed team in the series to date. So it's
That's
then
fair.
really sad that there is such a glaring issue here. I ran a poll on this channel, and
Yeah, Steven exists.
94% of the 30,000 of you that voted said that in your mind, Steven Stone is the true champion of Hoenn. Meaning that despite Emerald being the popular game, it's Ruby and Sapphire's champion that people associate Hoenn with. And it's
Yes.
crazy because Steven is way worse. And I only mean that as far as his team goes, because as a character, this is what you guys voted for.
Okay, they're right there.
See, Game Freak kind of backed themselves into a corner. Ruby and Sapphire create a narrative around Steven being the champion, and they didn't do a good job of adjusting for that in Emerald. In Emerald, it's Steven who you see throughout the entire game, and Wallace's only contribution is needing to ask a 12-year-old where the Sky Pillar is. Steven retains that there for every step of the way vibe. He's a little mysterious, he's helping you out along the way, he even does a double battle fight with you. And so when it's then Wallace that is waiting in the champion room, there's a very big lack of payoff. Steven is helpful, whereas Wallace does nothing in the story. And so this just creates a feeling of resentment. I mean, like 94% is pretty compelling. I think I can say, like, we as a fan base just don't like Wallace. Steven was the guy, and yet what are you doing here? Just go away. So from a fight perspective, I am going to give Wallace S tier. Like, it is a great fight. But storyline is a really important thing, especially for the champion. And I don't know, it's just like when you place in a champion that people dislike more than the evil team leaders, you have seriously messed up in your storytelling.
Everything that I was about to say, he said. Great reaction content, I know.
But with all the cards on the table now, it's time to finally look at the big three. Part 8. The big three.
What
The
is
first
the big
driving
three?
force that holds Emerald back is inconsistency. I can play this game with a Swampert, Gardevoir, Salamence, Aggron, Manectric, Swellow build, and it feels like a good game. But if you venture much off that standard team, Emerald suddenly starts to feel very scary. Furthermore, we went very in-depth in this video looking at major trainers, but
I don't think you did. Okay, let's get through the rest of the video.
Entire roster, untalked about, of average, normal run-of-the-mill trainers that are really bad. Here's a challenge for you. Name me a single normal trainer in the game that is difficult.
Name me a individual trainer in the entire series that's difficult. What are you talking about? Joey's Rattata? My bad, you're right. Joey's Rattata is goated. That doesn't mean that it's a good thing, though. I agree. That's why Emerald Kaizo exists. That's why Run and Bun exists. If you're talking about a standard mainline Pokemon game, unfortunately, that's what you have to expect.
Personally, I can name one fight. It's that skill swap slacking double battle at the very end of Victory Road. Outside of Victory Road, though,
It shouldn't be the standard, though? Right, but then we just talk about Pokemon in general. Like, this isn't a point.
I don't think there is like genuinely a single hard normal trainer.
Yeah, in the entire series.
You know, we sit here and we talk about, oh, this gym is good and this gym is not so good. But regardless of which gym is good, everything in between is dead easy.
Yeah, the whole series is like that, brother. What do you mean?
It's also inconsistent in its story. Like, Wallace kind of comes out of nowhere. Wally isn't in the picture at all until
Yeah.
the last beats of the game. The villains look like absolute idiots. Brendan or May just kind of disappear. Everyone's story is a little all over the place. There's even more than that. It's inconsistent.
Yeah, the story's bad. The only Pokemon game that we play for the story is Gen 5. And unfortunately, that's the standard. But that's the standard of Pokemon games is a different video than this.
In its move distribution, inconsistently powered abilities, which I couldn't even touch on because it's absurd and
Yeah, just other abilities are better than. Oh, I gotta let him talk.
still all over the place.
Yeah.
There's even more than that. It's inconsistent in its move distribution.
Yeah.
Inconsistently powered abilities, which I couldn't even touch on because it's
Some
absurd.
abilities are better than
Inconsistent distribution
others.
of types, even inconsistent
Yes.
counters. And so when I talk about inconsistency,
Okay.
what I mean are those little tiny micro details of game design. It's those little pieces of moves and encounters and typing, individual lines of dialogue even. And these sort of come together to create the mid-sized building blocks of the game. You know, these come together to make things like full storylines or gym leader teams or your own teams. And so what I would say is that these slightly larger building blocks take us to the second issue, which is an issue of being uncommitted. Like, from a gameplay perspective, what is Pokemon Emerald? It is kind of trying to be a challenge mode. There's really strong gym leaders, but at the same time, everything in between is bad. Is this trying to be a new story? Well, okay, yes, it arguably does a lot of things better.
What?
Like, if you're trying to make a new story and make Wallace champion, why did you keep all of those beats of Steven throughout the game? Enemy and player teams are boring. Trainers are way too under-leveled. Most Pokemon are too bad to seriously use. Even things I love, like the Tate and Liza fight. It's not like there's much warning to prepare you for a competitively strategized double battle. Don't get me wrong, I love that there are double battles in this game. The problem is that there's not enough for you to seriously build your team around that system. It makes for really fun fights and it doesn't bother me, but there is genuine reason to complain about that. Is it a singles mode? Is it a doubles mode? It's mostly a singles mode, but like sometimes you just get thrown doubles and you can't really prepare for it. It's an inconsistent philosophy in those little micro details that leads to an uncommitted vision in each larger block or component of the game. And it's these building blocks that form together to create my final.
What? What is he talking about? I've agreed with the majority of the second half of this video. What the f is he talking about, man? It's a Pokemon game. What do you mean, what's the point of it? I run around and I catch little creatures in the little balls. And I throw it at that. I throw the ball at the Pokemon and I catch it. And then I train it and then I bond with it. And then I go and I fight gym leaders to prove my strength. The f you mean it's uncommitted? What is his point? They didn't take Steven out because it's too much work. Like you said, they only had a year to make this game. And they didn't want it for whatever decision-making process that they decided, they didn't want Steven to be the champion, so they just plopped Wallace in there. It's not a singles or a doubles mode. It's variety to make some things interesting. This doesn't mean anything. You said nothing. This was 5 minutes of gobbledygook. But what do you mean, what's the vision? The vision is it's a Pokemon game.
And biggest of the three issues
What's
with
the
Pokemon Emerald.
What is it?
Inconsistency in foundational decisions leads to an uncommitted vision. This builds a house
Disagree.
of unfulfillment. Okay, it's unfulfillment. Emerald is unfulfilling. Despite being the best in the series to date, despite creating such a colorful, diverse
I'll let him
world,
talk.
despite doing so much right, is just unfulfilling. It's a game of half-baked concepts that we look back on with rose-tinted glasses and only recall its many highs. We often forget the lows of 2 of the 3 starters being bad or the evil teams posing no
Stop talking about the starters. The movesets are the problems.
threat, or every casual trainer in the game being the 3 starters being bad, or the evil teams posing no threat, or every casual trainer in the game being a bag of. We forget all these little tiny issues that build together to just create a very flawed game. Playing Pokemon Emerald today just leaves me with a sense of dissatisfaction. And it sucks because I have such a
sorry to
huge
hear
spot
that.
in my heart for the Gen 3 games, but they just don't hold up like my brain thinks
They
do.
absolutely
It
do, man.
absolutely had the most highs in the series to date, but there's still so much lacking that I just can't sit here and act like these games are perfect. But
Talking through it, I've figured out how to articulate my problem with this video. He is saying that he doesn't like the correct way to do the fight is not interesting. The correct way to do Watson is to start with Mudkip. The correct way to beat Flannery is to surf spam. And he thinks that that is uninteresting. I think that this guy really wants to play with the Pokemon that he likes, but he feels like playing with the Pokemon he likes in Pokemon Emerald is the incorrect way to play it, and so he can't play it that way. And hey man, just play it the way that you want to play it. And if you pick Torchic because you like Torchic and you feel bad that you're missing out because you didn't pick Mudkip, I don't know what to tell you. I also think that it would be really interesting to see him try a challenge run, because he also complained a lot about using the same 10 Pokemon, and that's very true. Like a Nuzlocke or something, to make it A, more challenging for you, B, force yourself to figure out different strategies that are the correct strategies, because that is the correct options that you have available to you, because you can't just surf spam. He wants the fights to be interesting, but the correct way to do the fights is not interesting, but he wants it to be interesting, but he has to do it the correct way in his brain. And just don't do it the correct way, man. If you want every single fight to be extremely tedious and extremely interesting and extremely challenging, then go play Run and Bun, or go play Emerald Kaizo, or go play Blaze Black. Like, there are ROM creators out there to make the game extremely difficult and extremely diverse. And if you want to do that, then you should go play those ROM hacks. So that's what I have to say.